don't care if you hate me because of the title, but it's the truth. In my mind, the Mac Mini M4, it might be small, but it's dead. I don't care anymore. Because even though they already had tough competition with computers like the MSO1 with a 13900H CPU, it's not even a competition anymore. Because for pretty much close to the same amount of money, you can now get the MSA2. This is just like the MSO1, a small form factor computer with a ton of expandability, except it has a CPU that is damn near twice as fast. That's right, everyone, we finally have an AMD powered version of the MSO1. I have been asking for this since it came out, and they finally did it. So let's check it out. We'll get to the performance in a little bit. That's what I'm most excited about. But first, let's take a look at the computer itself. We've got a combo audio jack here, power button, 2 USB 5 gig Type A ports, and then a USB 2.0. And then on the back, we've got basically the same I/O as the MSO1, which is great. That means we still have dual 10 gigabit SFP Plus ports here. Thank God. They're also still Intel chipset powered, which means that they're not like jank Aquantia NICs. You're gonna get reliable performance out of them. We've got two 2.5 gig RJ45s, and then it gets a little bit complicated. Because it's now an AMD CPU, there isn't native USB 4 support, and these two ports are actually just 10 gig Type-C, despite the label saying USB 4. And then we've got HDMI 2.0, which might also be 2.1, she wasn't sure. 10 gig Type A, 5 gig Type A, and the power jack. Because it has 10 gig, that means I get to compare it to the 10 gig Mac Mini, which is $700 US. And we'll get to the price of this one in a minute, but I think you're gonna like it. Now, aside from the GPU, putting the original MSO1 and the new MSA2 with AMD power, they look very similar. There are a few differences for the keen-eyed amongst you. You might notice the fan is a little bit different. Apparently they had some problems with this one. And if you look really closely, like on the edge here, you can actually see the heatsink under here is copper instead of aluminum, which is an upgrade you might expect given that this system on average draws around 20 watts more than the Intel one. More power, but also 1.9, 2 times the performance. Not really complaining. Got my precision screwdriver kit here, lttstore.com. Perfect for disassembling and reassembling small computers like these Minisforum. I want to see if the heatsink looks any different. It definitely is a different color. That's a copper heatsink if I've ever seen one. Other than that, the internal layout and, to be honest, a lot of the components are basically identical. We still have the memory slots here. So you've got 2 DDR5 SODIMM slots, not ECC supported, and they still have the same PCIe slot, which looks like a by 16 one, but is electrically by 8. It is Gen 4 though, so you've got a ton of bandwidth there still. Enough bandwidth and power that you can actually put a GPU in here, which is a really awesome use case. Like this one, which is kind of a weird GPU. It's an RTX 4060, but the laptop chip put into a half-height single slot card. Although it's made by a Chinese company and they don't really sell them in North America, I think you can find them on AliExpress or Taobao. But if you're not into that, you can also put an RTX 2000 Ada in here. And I've even actually seen an aftermarket RTX 4000 Ada cooler that makes it a single slot card. And it probably overheats, but still kind of cool. It definitely looks like a beefier fan. It's not like a liquid metal, crazy thermal solution like you would see on like a UM790. They have a little more space here, so it's not necessary, but you could probably upgrade the thermal paste yourself if you wanted to do that. I know on ours, we actually put PTM 7950 in there. On the backside, it looks pretty much the same. You can see that the bracket for the back of the CPU is a little different. There is still the same amount of M.2 slots, but there are a few small changes. Namely, there's no longer a switch to go between M.2 and U.2 because Minisforum includes a little U.2 SSD adapter for these machines. Sometimes people wouldn't switch the switch, and then you can... Would it damage the motherboard or just the SSD? It sounds like just the SSD, but even then it probably would have been fine unless it's like a SATA one. Even then it doesn't really matter anymore because they fixed the problem. Instead of having a little switch where you could screw it up, you can't screw it up anymore. Instead, when you use the U.2 adapter board, there's just a little connector for power, just for the U.2. So no way to screw that up. And we do still have 3 M.2 slots, but even better is that we have more PCIe lanes. Instead of just being Gen 4x4, Gen 3x4, and Gen 3x2, it's now 4x4, 4x4, 3x4. So there's a lot more PCIe back here, which means your SSD is going to run faster. I asked them, please God, can we have a version that has 2 U.2 SSDs? Please post in the comments if you want that. That would make this the craziest machine ever. You could put like 60 terabytes of Kioxia SSDs in here. Just tell them below, Minisforum, MSA2 with 2 U.2 SSDs, please. Thank you. We've still got Wi-Fi 6E and Bluetooth 5.2 over here. I think that's all for this. Oh, the fan bracket. They don't have it here because this is still kind of an early unit, although it does work. But there will be a newer fan bracket that works a little bit better in this area. We'll have to wait and see what that looks like. It's very similar. It's almost the same damn machine, but I guess that means we get to see how fast it goes. Hey, it's working. Just like our sponsor, dbrand, who sponsored our entire CES 2025 show coverage with their new Ghost 2.0 case. I've been running on my iPhone 15 Pro Max here, and it's an excellent case. Actually, I'm kind of shocked, dbrand. You might have saw that the Ghost V1 had some issues, but dbrand made it right and actually shipped out the Ghost V2 to everyone. I've been running it for a couple months now, and it is genuinely way more scratch resistant, really nice looking, and I don't know, this isn't in the talking points, but the magnets on this case are so strong. Like I used to have, shift it in my car, my phone would go flying off. I gotta like rip it off. The magnets are so strong. It has a lifetime no yellowing guarantee, so if you have a problem, you can get it replaced. So get yours at dbrand.com/ghost, and right now you can get $10 off. No code required. Get your Ghost V2 now. Look, I don't even care. See you later, phone. Imagine if it cracked. It didn't. I've been teasing you about the performance of this machine, but it is genuinely really awesome. It's equipped with a Ryzen 9 7945HX, which is a 16-core, 32-thread monster of a mobile chip. It has a 55-watt TDP stock, but Minisforum actually cranks it up to 85 watts in the performance profile. And then they also have 2 other profiles, balanced and silent, which are 75 watt and 60 watt respectively, at least for now. They said these numbers could change, but regardless, you can adjust it in the BIOS to change between them. And at least according to like Passmark synthetic benchmark numbers, it's around 1.9 times faster, multi-threaded. It's genuinely just kind of a monster of a CPU. Now it's worth mentioning if you use your MSO1 or MSA2 without a graphics card, the AMD chip actually has quite a bit worse integrated graphics. You can, of course, add a GPU, and if you need to do graphics related stuff, you should probably just add a GPU, but it is worth noting. And I think with that, we should try a Cinebench, right? I was hoping to have the MSO1 running side by side so we could drag race them, but the one that they brought to the show got damaged in shipping, unfortunately. It got a seriously hefty bonk. Look at that, though, 100 watts. It does have 2 power limits, so it will boost up to 100 watts for a short amount of time, and then it drops down to like 80, 85. Let's see what it pulls off. I mean, you could, in theory, customize it in the BIOS. Like if you put like some beefy or thermal paste. Look at that, 31,000. And that's with HW Info running. This is a pre-production like prototype system. They're not expecting to have this out until like around April timeframe. So these numbers might change a little bit, but ballpark 30,000 plus Cinebench score. That's almost double the previous and quite a bit faster than a base Mac Mini M4. This thing freaking rips. I mean, look at that. It's pretty much the same speed, if not a little bit faster than a 32-core second-gen Threadripper. It's crazy how far we've come. Now, at launch, they're targeting a price of around $600 to $700 US, which does put it right in comparison pricing with a Mac Mini M4. Considering it has 10 gig, the Mac Mini M4 with 10 gig is $700 US. So if they get closer to 600, you actually could justify a 256 gig SSD and 16 gigs of RAM and be the same price with way more expansion, way faster speeds. You don't have Mac OS, but if you're a tinkerer or you need the expansion, seriously, a freaking awesome system. Now, there are also going to potentially be other models. They're going to do like an SE with a lower end CPU, maybe no 10 gigabit, but it'll be quite a bit cheaper. And then if AMD releases a newer version of this CPU, they'll probably do like a MSA2S or Pro or something like that. And if you happen to be deploying these as like mini workstations on a fleet of systems, it is worth mentioning that the AMD CPUs don't have Intel vPro, which is like a remote management setup. So do with that what you will. You might need KVM, so you might need to find a different way to manage it, but goddamn that performance. But that's not all. They weren't done. This is the N5 Pro, which I guess the name got changed pretty recently because it was done in Sharpie, but I like it. Honestly, the old name was a little bit too close to MSO1. N5 Pro is a little bit better. This, as you might guess, is a normal hard drive NAS chassis. It's seemingly based primarily kind of on the MSO1 layout. You have the RAM over here, the CPU over here, PCIe slot over here. Very, very similar. There are a few differences. The board is a little bit longer. There is a connector here for power and SATA to the hard drives that are inside. But I mean, other than that, oh, it's like it's inverted, right? Because these are usually over here on an MSO1. It's similar vibe. If you put it like this, you almost couldn't even tell, but it's a little bit different. Let's look at the actual machine though, because I think that's a little bit more important. Oh, it is hefty. Oh yeah. There is USB 4 on this one, which is nice because it uses a different CPU. We'll get to that in a sec. It's got an Oculink port, which is always a nice touch. That gives you a PCIe Gen 4 x 4 connection that you could use with an eGPU or something of the like. It's got HDMI 2.0, 5 gig USB Type A, 10 gig Ethernet, 5 gig Ethernet, and USB 2.0. That's a mouthful, but it's a lot of I/O. I'm not complaining. We also have fans up here, which is obviously different. It's a little bit taller than an MSO1. But as you probably guessed with the motherboard I was showing you before, it comes out. That's sick. You can get a better idea of what it looks like when it's all filled up here. This is a Gen 4 x 4 PCIe connection now instead. The CPU that they use in this, which is a Ryzen AI9 HX370, has a little bit less PCIe lanes, and because of the hard drives and stuff, they kind of have to allocate it differently. So this only has x 4, and then on the back, this is what I want in the MSA2. 2 U.2 drives. Oh my God, this is the best thing ever. So you can have 5 big hard drives. I guess you could put 24 terabyte drives in there. You put 32 terabyte drives in there if you wanted. And then you can also have 2 U.2 drives. That means, I mean, combined, what are we talking, like 30, like 160 terabytes of hard drive, and then like, man, they make 60 terabyte U.2 drives. So you could have like almost 300 terabytes of storage in this little machine. That's kind of crazy. So the U.2s, one of them is Gen 4 x 1, and the other one is Gen 4 x 2, and then this guy up here is also Gen 4 x 1. So you're gonna lose some peak performance, especially if you were to put like Gen 3 drives in here, but it is kind of a limitation of the platform itself, and there's not a ton they can do about that. It's still awesome. I mean, if you think about it, you're gonna be limited by your network throughput on a device like this. Even if you were to put like a dual 25 gig network card in here, it's gonna be hard to push SSDs faster than Gen 4 x 1 or Gen 4 x 2. But it's a sick little cartridge. I wanna let's check out the hard drives. On the bottom, we can get a quick look at how this mounts. There's usually 2 little screws that hold the tray in place, but I took those out ahead of time. Ooh. On the front, we've got USB 4, which is do Thunderbolt if you want, 40 gigabit there, and then a 10 gig Type A, and then here is our hard drives. Oh my God. Oh, that feels amazing. It's so crunchy. Wow. Okay, let's, you gotta give it a good tug, but there you go. Look at that. It's just a 2 terabyte Barracuda. Oh, here, look, they're toolless. That's nice. Just pulls off there. Boom. Oh, and it even has little rubber mounts. Nice. Anti-vibration, baby. And if you don't want it to be toolless, you can still just screw them in. They also support 2.5 inch SSDs with these holes here. So you could have like an all solid state NAS if you want. We've got it booted up with Proxmox now, but that's something we should probably talk about. They don't exactly know what operating system they're gonna ship these machines with if you aren't buying the bare bones. We'll get into the pricing in a sec. This is gonna be like a second half of 2025 release date for this product. So they are reaching out to certain NAS operating system companies to try to sort something out, but if you buy bare bones like I would, install TrueNAS or HexOS, the company Linus invested in. Either way, we can at least get a look at the CPU that's in this one. It is an AI9 HX Pro 370 from AMD. This CPU, not quite as powerful as the one in the MSA2, but it does have a way beefier GPU. This is more of like a gaming console kind of chip, which for a NAS, you might think is a little weird, but consider you might use this as a Plex server, in which case having a GPU for transcoding is awesome. It's a 12-core chip, 4 of which are full-fat Zen 5 CPU cores, and then the remaining 8 are Zen 5C CPUs. AMD doesn't really call them efficiency cores like Intel because it's still technically like the same core, just with a little bit less cache and kind of shrunk down, but it is lower frequency, so I mean, let's be honest, they're basically efficiency cores. That is another reason this doesn't have like a 7945HX. It's a NAS. You don't really want it to be crazy on the power draw situation. Out of the box, this is gonna be configured probably around 45 watts, but it is a 28 watt stock TDP chip. It has that 16 compute unit RDNA 3 plus GPU that will definitely rip. And it even has AMD's XDNA NPU as part of the CPU, but it's not enabled yet, and it very well might not be by the time it comes out. Now, as a NAS, some of you might be wondering, what kind of memory is it? It's DDR5 SODIMM, just like the MS series I showed you, it's right there. But because it's AMD's Pro series of chip, it technically supports unbuffered ECC. And if we look on the system here in our Proxmox, we can see, boom, multi-bit ECC. So it supports it. I have heard some like weird things about these chips and the ECC being funky. You guys should probably look into that. But in theory, according to AMD, unbuffered ECC, it's on, it's working. I pulled out the extra empty drive slot so we can get a look inside of here. You can actually see the backplane inside of there. It's not using a SATA controller on the CPU. I don't even know if these modern laptop CPUs even have them. And if they do, it's probably like one. Instead, they're using two PCIe Gen 3 lanes from the CPU connected to a J Micron SATA controller. So that is taking the PCIe connections, making SATA connections out of it, and you should be able to get full speed out of all 5 drives. I guess that just leaves us to talk about the price. Now, this is a very competitive space. You can get 2, 3, 4, maybe even 5 bay NAS units in the realm of $200, $300, $400 US. This is gonna be probably around 800, but it does come with a lot more than units like that do. You have a PCIe slot you can use, which some of the other ones do. It has a way faster CPU, a lot of GPU horsepower. It's way more expandable with dual U.2 or technically 3 M.2s, depending on how you want to configure it. Overall, pretty cool machine. It could be a little bit on the high end of price for what your average home user wants out of a machine like this, but if you're a bit more of a nerd and you want more expansion, there's not a ton of other options in the space. I've even seen people start using like MSO1s with an external SATA controller, like connected to a JBOD, which is crazy. But it's cool to see Minisforum expanding into a new space, and I can't wait to try it once it's actually out. Who knows? I wonder what OS they're gonna put on this thing. Hopefully not Windows. Don't put Windows on it. She's shaking her head. No Windows. So thanks for watching, guys. If you like this video, hit the like button. Make sure you comment down below to tell Minisforum that the MS-A2 should have a new version that fits 2 U.2 SSDs. Thank you, appreciate it. Let's see what they got next year.